Well, the work is made very much in that context. I mean, that's the backdrop or the space that I'm making the work from and in is very much my own life and my own experience. And early on in the 70s, 80s, I made work that was very much about kind of reacting to things that I saw, reacting to things that that had happened, kind of a way of making sense of them. And of course, there is no sense to people killing each other and, horrible acts of violence and, trying to kind of make sense of that. Eventually, it dawned on me that this was not.
U idiličnoj zapuštenosti parka rezidencije britanskog namjesnika u Sjevernoj Irskoj teško je sjetiti se da se nalazimo u gradu koji je simbol nasilja uzrokovanog političkom nesnošljivosti. Belfast, glavni grad Sjeverne Irske. 300.000 stanovnika. Možda najpoznatija neuralgična točka svijeta. 40 godina sukoba unionistički nastrojenih protestanata, potomaka engleskih i škotskih doseljenika, s nacionalistički nastrojenim katolicima irskoga podrijetla razdijelili su urbano tkivo Belfasta zidovima, bodljikavom žicom, tvrđavama, a njegove stanovnike mržnjom i frustracijom. Razgraničenja su označena bojom, stajališta su iskazana muralima. Uvriježio se razdvojen život, obrazovanje, brakovi, čak i taksi službe. Potom se 1998. godine sve izmijenilo. Sporazum iz Belfasta omogućio je primirje koje je Sjevernoj Irskoj najprije donijelo financijska ulaganja u razorenu privredu, a potom i razmišljanja o suživotu. Posvuda se u Belfastu raskrčuju ruševine, preuređuju se i prenamjenjuju prostori. Zavladao je duh promjene i poleta. Što se uistinu dogodilo, upitali smo Damiana Smitha, direktora Arts Councila Sjeverne Irske.
On the one hand, the Provisional IRA, the organization which had been carrying on a campaign for 25 years against the British, what they call the British occupation of Ireland, decided that the war that they'd been pursuing was not having the desired effect, and that their objectives could be better pursued through peaceful means and through political means. So there had been a lot of negotiation going on between the British government, the Irish government and the IRA in order to bring this about. And the loyalist paramilitaries then, who had become very active in the 2 or 3 years just before this period and had killed a lot of people, they also declared a ceasefire. So you had the two main protagonists, the people who killed for what they believed in, said, that's it. But what's happened miraculously is that people who have suffered the most, people who have the most reason for hating, decided that was it. Had enough. People who had lost loved ones said, that's it, we've had enough. And they decided that that was the case. And when you have that kind of extraordinary spirit, that people can recognize that in themselves, there's really nothing you can't achieve. And it's that energy that has pushed the politicians, the people who are always the problem in every society.
Sporazum iz Belfasta omogućio je izbore i prvi saziv parlamenta nakon 1972. godine. To je značilo i osnivanje Ministarstva kulture.
For the first time we have a local minister for the arts. We have a 12-member committee who are all local, all democratically elected, who are deciding the priorities for the arts now in Northern Ireland.
Osnovni cilj Ministarstva kulture povezivanje je suprotstavljenih dijelova društva i uspostava novog identiteta koji će nadići razlike. Paradoksalno, Danas se i katolički i protestantski dio društva osjeća napuštenim od onog što smatra svojom maticom, bila to Velika Britanija ili Republika Irska. Većina naših sugovornika preporučila je razgovor s osobom koja je po njihovom mišljenju nezaobilazna pokretačka sila u novonastalim uvjetima. Tako smo upoznali Aideen McGimsey, ženu izuzetne energije.
Both feel unsure and uncertain of their context, but do they ever get the opportunity to actually realize that together they are Northern Irish and share more than maybe they do with the respective identities that they associate with? And I think that's what we have to start to chip away at, to give them the opportunity to see the bigger picture. So I think what the Assembly will be striving to do with a programme of government is to let people see where they fit, and that it isn't an abandonment situation, it's an inclusion one, where everybody will be, it's not a question of we're abandoning you and looking after them. It's actually that together we want to move forward. Now, I'm talking politics here and I'm not a politician, but that's what my vision would be.
Strah od gubitka identiteta osobito je prisutan u radničkoj klasi. George Newell, osnivač je društva Base. Društvo je situirano u istočnom Belfastu gdje živi protestantsko radništvo, mahom zaposleno u brodogradilištu. Aktivnosti poput softverske izobrazbe, tečajeva muzike i sportske rekreacije zamišljene su kao alternativa životu ulice i pubova, koji se kao jedina opcija nude mladima siromašnog podrijetla. Uz jačanje osobnog samopouzdanja promiče se i britanski identitet.
I mean, the culture that we have grew up in and the generations that grew up with us were all in the British culture, the British way of life. Young persons are the future of this generation. I mean, they're the future of this country. And if we don't try to educate them, if we don't try and put them on the road to success, an opportunity for them as they get older, then they would just become another part of society being exploited or being kept out, become no-hopers. It's of major importance to them that they know where they're coming from, and what we are trying to do is show them where they're hopefully going to.
Protestantska strana društva iznervirana je rezultatima mirovnog procesa koju je duboko razjedinio. Na njihovim muralima vodi se pravi rat za titulu nepokolebljivog čuvara Ulstera i nepomirljivog protivnika suživota s katolicima. Prvi murali nastali su u katoličkim dijelovima Belfasta kao odgovor britanskoj represiji. Njihova je ikonografija izvedena iz srednjovjekovnih uprizorenja života svetaca, a slikom i riječju veličaju poginule heroje otpora. Danas, u doba primirja, velika su turistička atrakcija i izvor prihoda za sudionike događaja, često bivše zatvorenike, poput Martina, našeg vodiča i tumača.
Saying, this here's Newry, and the army personnel are carrying in supplies because it's a no-go area for the armoured cars, because of booby-trap bombs. Have you seen the peace wall at the other end here? Mm-hmm. Have you already seen this? Mm-hmm. Bring you down the shank of it, we'll not be stopping.
Murali su stekli međunarodnu slavu, smatraju ih izvornom umjetnošću, a vješti majstori navodno slikaju i naplaćuju objema stranama.
Hello, my name's John Stewart. It's like two men stand on a map, Ulster, you know, with background in the background. Right, boy.
A lot of the stuff early on, like mural painting and stuff, it would have been very difficult to fund that early on and make just, a reasonable cause for it. But now I think there's something there. That's the art that people in those districts are looking at. I think they should fund it and improve the quality of the art that's going on there, and challenge those mural painters to actually think about the images that they're portraying at to 6-year-olds on the street corners. I mean, there are so many military murals. It must be very difficult to bring children up in those areas.
U središtu Belfasta, za razliku od njegova istočnog i zapadnog dijela, podjele nisu vidljive. Ovdašnji murali lišeni su bilo kakve političke, osim možda pacifističke ideje. dekorativni su i bez snage. To potvrđuje mišljenja svih onih koji rade s lokalnom umjetnošću da je polarizirano okruženje Sjeverne Irske izvor vitalnosti i posebnosti njezine umjetnosti.
There is still the engine of the arts in this part of Ireland is still there, and that engine is the proximity of two communities who have different identities. Now that's the thing that over the last 30, 40 years has caused violence and conflict. But I think the proximity of those two communities is also why it's such a tremendous place to be and why there's so much artistic and creative energy in this place. So as long as artists can keep reflecting that kind of energy between those two communities, then I think the arts will look up in Northern Ireland.
The city of Belfast was in flames around us, and as an art student, I found it incredibly. Conversation in art school was about, the difference between two shades of yellow, or how large can you make a canvas? And it was all looking at what was going on in London and what was going on in New York. And for me, I really made that decision then that I had to make work that had some degree of honesty, that was somehow or other describing what it was like to be where I was.
So let me show you these guns. See, these are guns, and they're not very inflated, but I repeat, the feeling is that in some way they're marked. And guns are very much a feature of our culture, so therefore by making a structure that marks them, I feel that I'm marking them. What I'm doing here is, it's about new life, a symbol of new life coming into the culture. If you, the wine, which is like blood and so on, pours down and comes in and in a sense alters things. If you think of the Mass, which is very Catholic, but these here are supposed to be Orange men that are very Protestant, so in a curious way it's a connection of those two cultures coming through. And this is like alchemical, again, where something being changed by the addition of blood or fluids, something being altered, and, well, the idea that somehow the culture needs new life in some sort of way.
Biva nova izložba snimljena je u galeriji Engine Room. Na 3. katu istodobno se održavala diplomska izložba studenata Likovne akademije. Uočljiva je razlika u zanimanju mlađe generacije umjetnika. Primjer je staro tek nekoliko godina, mlađi naraštaj umjetnika orijentiralo je ka općim temama. Za mlade, razdoblje sukoba kao da je prošlo.
For our generation now, that it's not really an issue anymore. We don't feel the tension on the streets, and it's really more for the older generation who still remember all the things they've seen. It's not prevalent in the work. It used to be a couple of years ago. It used to be a real big issue, but I don't feel it anymore.
Iako se čini kako je vizualna umjetnost u Belfastu snažno prisutna, sami su nam likovni umjetnici rekli da je književnost prema irskoj tradiciji najsnažniji oblik umjetnosti. Dramski pisac Gary Mitchell dobitnik je prestižnih nagrada i još uvijek čvrsto uvjeren u poslanju umjetnosti. Njegov komad Marching On premijerno je predstavljen u Lyric teatru, svega 10 dana prije početka sezone ozloglašenih protestantskih marševa, koji su i ove godine uspjeli podići političku tenziju.
Well, really, with a play like Marching On, it seems bizarre to a lot of people that this is really the first play on stage anywhere in the British Isles or in the Republic of Ireland that deals with the marching issue. And considering people have been marching for 200 years, it seems a bit extraordinary that there's never been a play about it. And I think to put that into a context for you, Protestant people generally, working class Protestants in Northern Ireland, which is to say the poor people, have never trusted the media, and they've never had any interest in the arts, and they've always felt misrepresented. So there's never been a real sort of explosion of talent from that area, where we've never really had our own writers or our own dramatists. So it's only really been recently that, well, probably particularly through what I'm doing, that I'm in a way trying to, for the first time, look at things from a Protestant perspective, what it's like to be a poor Protestant growing up in Northern Ireland.
Iako su neprilike u Sjevernoj Irskoj, kako sukobe vole nazivati britanski mediji, česta tema umjetničkih dijela, duhovna kultura pokazala se dobrom platformom zbližavanja.
So I think it's a vital tool in helping people to understand their conflict. At the most basic of levels, bringing people together, but then actually taking them through a pyramid of understanding where they can agree to differ. They can agree that their cultures are not the same, but that they respect the fact that each have their own and they can share what's common, but still maintain their own unique identity.
Kako bi što bolje definiralo zadatke kojima će se posvetiti, novo osnovano Ministarstvo kulture pod energičnim vodstvom Aideen McGimpsey odlučilo se za tehniku future searcha, što bi u slobodnom prijevodu značilo propitivanje budućnosti. Tehnika zahtijeva tijelo sastavljeno od umjetnika i vladinih službenika, koji zajedničkim radom određuju viziju budućih umjetničkih i kulturnih projekata. Jedan od ciljeva je promocija pomirbe.
But that you're actually engaging in that art form because it does so many other things as well, and not just solely for peace. I mean, you could put all the department's finances into work on Irish music or Ulster Scots or Irish dancing or Scottish dancing or whatever, that there actually had to be a criteria where it met the needs of the two communities. But that would be a very sterile debate. I think sometimes by showing people different and new forms of art in its broadest sense, you actually lift them onto a different level of understanding which they can share.
Slično stajalište zastupa i Savjet Arts Councila, sastavljen od umjetnika izabranih na javnom natječaju. Namjera je isključiti politički ključ pri donošenju odluke o sufinanciranju umjetničkih projekata.
Certainly from the Arts Council's point of view, we don't take into account the political content of work, and we don't take into account the particular political perspective. People are entirely free to do what they like. Where we do come into play is in the old thing about artistic standards. And of course this is the hardest one probably nowadays to defend.
Rad s omladinom, uvođenje pozitivnih zamisli i tolerancije, ono je što su sve društvene institucije spremne podržati. To je rezultat spoznaje da su upravo budući naraštaji oni koji će, budu li širokih gledišta, zasnovati harmonično društvo. Cinemagic je jedna od organizacija s takvim programom. Osnovano je 1989. godine kao nezavisna udruga s idejom da mladima, poglavito iz najsiromašnijih, to jest najekstremnijih dijelova Belfasta, pruži ne samo mogućnost gledanja filmova, već i sve uvjete za kvalitetno obrazovanje u izradi filma i korištenju multimedije.
Letting young people actually get hold of cameras, letting them start to tell their stories. So you know that literally from one street to the next you can have a complete sort of segregation of peoples. And it seems that young people are being brought up inheriting that hideous legacy of never mixing with people from the other side of the community. So, I mean, integrated education is something that we'd be hugely supportive of and we hope is going to expand and extend, and it isn't always just going to be preaching to the converted. But what we're trying to do with this project is bring young people together in their own communities as well as in a neutral space within the city.
Fight the power! Just spray, okay?
Svakog prosinca Cinemagic organizira i jedini filmski festival posvećen djeci i mladima u cijeloj Velikoj Britaniji.
And I think it was particularly poignant to do something like that here because the focus, the political focus, the social focus has always been on the adult male population, if you like. So it was important to do something that was new and innovative for young people.
Sličan program, uz naglasak na dokumentarnom aspektu filma, ima i 70. godina osnovana filmska zajednica Northern Vision.
A group of filmmakers who felt it was very important that they would have a voice in commenting about the situation here. They felt that somewhat the situation, rather than being a barrier to progress, was an opportunity for progress, and that if you had people being very creative and giving forward alternatives, it could evolve into a very progressive society. So anyone can make a documentary. We will help them to do it. We have done it in the past where people have come in and said, look, I really want to express this. I want to express this through television. I don't know anything about it. And there's people who work for Northern Visions who will help them if they feel a project's worthwhile. For example, we had a young gay woman who came in and said, look, I want to make a film about what it's like being gay in Belfast, what it's like being gay in Northern Ireland. And she came in and we learned her the whole process of shooting and producing and so on. And she made a film about that issue, which met with a lot of success after she made it. And she went on to make a career in filmmaking. But essentially, we think making films is very good for the democracy of a society. It raises lots of issues, gets people thinking, freedom of thought, freedom of expression. It's just one of those tools.
Za one koji svoje viđenje života u Belfastu žele pokazati fotografskim medijem, godine 1983. otvoren je Belfast Exposed. Do danas su tu stasale generacije fotografa, te je prikupljena bogata arhiva crno-bijelih fotografija grada. Ove fotografije vrlo vam brzo razotkrivaju pravu dušu Belfasta. Svjedočanstva su to teške svakodnevice, lišena bilo kakve patetike, kao što je način poduke lišen ikakvoga prenemaganja.
We're not an accredited training organization, and I don't particularly want to go down that stage anyway. We're very hands-on, very basic, and I call our method of teaching, I don't know how this will translate into Croatian, but it's bullshit-free. No bullshit, and we're not a camera club, we're not an elitist organization, and we love to share the knowledge, and we particularly love to let young people know just how easy it is to make good pictures. It's not at all difficult if you're taught properly.
Umjetničku radionicu Flex Art Studios osnovala je potkraj 80-ih skupina diplomanata likovne akademije, sa željom da nađu radni prostor koji bi im omogućio ostanak u Belfastu.
Well, the studio is kind of committed to providing cheap, accessible studio spaces for artists to work. And it's to continue doing this and to promote younger artists. We're now taking on an artist each year who comes out of college and providing them with a kind of stepping stone into the professional arena. So it's to encourage people activities here, really.
Sve umjetničke udruge za svoje preživljavanje bore se obraćajući se programima na Gradsko vijeće, Arts Council, British Council ili Nacionalnu lutriju. Djelovanje British Councila ne razlikuje se od onog u drugim dijelovima Ujedinjenog kraljevstva. Problem su, dakako, uvijek nedovoljna sredstva.
And artists have got to this point where they feel that some artists, I don't mean all artists, some of them have got to the point where I think they feel that being an artist is enough. You don't have to ensure that you sell, that you run a small business, that you eat by your brush, perhaps is the phrase. I would like to see an increased budget for the British Council in the North of Ireland, not because I want to have more money, but because I think there is a valuable job that the British Council can do in the projection overseas of a very vibrant arts situation here, and one which is reflecting a country in a fairly unique process of change.
Ipak, na razini cijeloga društva osjeća se izvjestan zamah u potpomaganju umjetničkih projekata.
I think here in Belfast, in the last couple of years, the City Council's taken a lot more active a role in funding the arts in particular. The Arts Council's always been there, but now is, with the City Council as another resource, it's kind of giving enough money to do bigger projects, more works being produced here, and more people are staying on in Belfast and working.
So what do you think, what is the idea behind that decision to invest more in art?
I think art promotes culture and culture promotes tourism and a good profile, a good image. And I think presenting a good image is important for the city here.
U galeriji Engine Room imaju drugačije mišljenje. Prije 3 godine galeriju je osnovala skupina lokalnih umjetnika, na njoj praktično gube, a održavaju se zahvaljujući jeftinu najmu prostora, na čemu su zahvalni poduzetnicima koji su ovu bivšu toplanu preuredili u poslovni centar. Vlasnici su smatrali da postojanje stalnog izložbenog prostora pridonosi imidžu centra.
The Arts Council for Northern Ireland for about, I'm sure, at least 3 years, but I think it's more like 10 years, have not got an increase in the basic money that they get to fund the arts here in Northern Ireland, and many more organisations looking for money. They are giving them money, but it's always
divided in smaller parts. Yeah.
Just smaller and smaller. And in some cases there have been sort of large, heavily funded organisations over the years have actually dropped out. They just couldn't cope anymore. So. What usually happens is the programs that they run, especially theatre companies, if they don't get the funding, they don't attract the right sort of cast, they don't attract the right sort of playwrights, and the standard of what they do drops. Then the Arts Council look at what they do and say, oh, well, it's not the standard we would want, so we're withdrawing funding, And that's, it's very, very difficult.
U ostvarivanju ambicioznih projekata, respektabilne galerije poput Ormo Bath Gallery naizgled nemaju financijskih problema. Galerija je adaptirana zgrada bivšeg javnog kupatila, a smještena je na južnome rubu središnje gradske zone.
It's the largest, most significant venue in the north of Ireland. The gallery opened in 1995, and we have a remit to show a wide range of work. I mean, obviously it's the largest space for contemporary practice here in Belfast. We show international work, but at the same time we showcase the work of Irish artists, often putting that work in context with international work as well. I think it's quite important that we try and make a relationship with what is happening currently internationally with what is currently being produced here in Northern Ireland or Ireland as a whole. It's often expected of us to have a different relationship with the local arts constituents than the international, but I don't apply any of that criteria when it comes to setting a program. It really is on the quality of the work, and we've set in place a number of initiatives which seem to me to prove that Irish artists are operating at a level which is comparable to any artist internationally. We have an open exhibition.
Naši sugovornici svjesni su nezahvalne pozicije Belfasta unutar rubnog položaja Sjeverne Irske s dodatnim opterećenjem nasilne političke prošlosti i neposve sređene sadašnjosti.
Northern Ireland is provincial. It's small. People have their attitudes are smaller. There's not enough. People are poorer, and they've had a tradition of being poor, so they simply don't have enough money to buy your work. And also, actually, I would say that the Troubles also have held them back. The fighting here has kept their attitudes conservative. And so for a number of reasons like that, they're very conservative. It's extremely hard to sell contemporary work.
No teško nasljeđe i neizvjesna budućnost većini umjetnika poticaj su za aktivniji i iskreniji angažman. Mnogi uspješni umjetnici ipak ostaju u Belfastu.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I love it here. I think it's a great place. And not just because there's loads to write about, but I've always loved living here, and I love the people. And it's part of my kind of work, and what I do is that it continually annoys me to see Northern Ireland represented in movies or in books or even on television or in plays, where the people from Northern Ireland are just evil, and that's all they are. It's very, very easy to demonize people, and just to show them all as monsters or crazy people fighting each other. I think that it's much more difficult to show people as human beings.
I think the world is only starting to kind of realise that maybe there is something other than madmen chucking bombs at each other in Northern Ireland, that as a people we have experienced an enormous amount, and that the art here has an integrity, has a connection.
I've been genuinely heartened in the 6 months I've been in post by the sheer quality of the talent and expertise that we have. The world deserves to see it. They deserve to see a new Northern Ireland, a different image to what people, when you say as you would, where you are from, you can see the shutters immediately, the bombs and the bullets and all the strife, instead of seeing what I'm sure your country is beautiful as well, but whoever sees past the political situation there as well. So we have an awful lot to share in that sense.
Rita Duffy jedna je od najzapaženijih umjetnika Belfasta. U prosincu ove godine predstavit će se na skupnoj izložbi irskih umjetnika u Zagrebačkom muzeju suvremene umjetnosti.
I suppose the only thing I really want to kind of impart to the people in Croatia is that never underestimate the power of art. And when I say the power of art, I mean creative thinking by everyone. You know that kind of saying, oh, everyone's an artist today? Well, everybody has the ability to think creatively and to kind of solve problems through that creative thinking.
This is a neutral venue. Please leave your politics at the front door and your swally or your drink behind the bar. So we'd like everybody to feel comfortable here.
Kakve će osjećaje gajiti ovi mali sjeverni Irci kada odrastu? Netrpeljivost ili radost? Nadu ili tjeskobu? Nadajmo se da će i njima i njihovom gradu novo stoljeće značiti ostvarenje velikih projekata koje su započeli. Poželimo im da zla kob nekadašnjeg velikog pothvata, a bila je to izgradnja Titanika u gradskom brodogradilištu, nestane i da Belfast ubuduće pamtimo samo po izuzetnoj energiji njegove kulturne produkcije.